All right, turning now to this year's presidential race, Hillary Clinton has made a place for herself in the history books. She is poised to become the first female to lead a major party's presidential ticket. And, no matter what you feel, if you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton or not, I think this week it is a time to take a step back and say, yeah, we've hit that milestone. Nancy, I'm going to start with you, what your reaction has been.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, my mom is 84. She was born in 1931 at a time when women could not get credit, could not get birth control. There wasn't effective birth control. Couldn't really wear pants in most settings. And now she's going to be able to cast a vote for a female presidential candidate this fall. It's huge. It's huge.
Nolan, how would you characterize the impact?
I think, if you look at the conversation this week, it was, sort of taken in stride. It wasn't like, oh my God, how we never believed this would happen. I think there's been, for her as an individual, it was a natural progression, but I also think for the country it was a natural progression. I mean, it wasn't such a big shock as it was, say, when Mondale nominated the first female vice president. I think people sort of expected this to happen.
Go ahead, Nancy.
What's interesting is that people talk about this. There was, articles about was it inevitable? Well, obviously it wasn't inevitable because no woman has ever done this before. So it's hard for that to be considered a done deal. But what I've seen in the last 2 days is a lot of women reaching out either via social media or personally to say this is so huge. And like I didn't want to say this before because a lot of times if you've voiced support for Hillary Clinton, a million supposedly well-meaning people pop up to tell you that you shouldn't support her just because she's a woman, which is pretty insulting. I mean, I don't know anyone who's supporting her just because she's a woman. But I think that you're starting to see women feel more able to voice their support and excitement about it because, she's in the home stretch now.
I think it's interesting, too, that you mentioned that your mother is watching this and saying, oh, gosh, I never thought I would, see the day. How does that translate to younger women? Because much has been made about younger female voters and how they've broken a lot for Bernie Sanders, or they've taken a different look, or this hasn't been as big of an impact on them. How would you?
So I'm 40, and my mother was 43 when she had me. So I have an unusually old mother for my age, and I think that for even a woman born when I was born in 1975, it's hard to imagine the world that my mother and even my older sisters were born into. And I don't mean this to sound condescending at all. I think that I and women younger than I am take for granted that we're going to be able to control whether, how often, and if we have children. I think that we take for granted that areas of employment are open to us that weren't open to even my older sisters who are 18 and 16 years older than I am. That they were told in school there were things that they just couldn't do. They were born in 1957 and 59. And I, like I said, I don't mean this to sound condescending. I think that when you've lived one way all your life, sometimes it's the Fair Credit Act wasn't passed until 1974. That was the federal law that said that women didn't have to have a male cosigner to get credit. I mean, this is 1 year before I was born. This is in. This stuff is not ancient history, and I think it's hard to understand that when it's been that way all your life. Like it was a process for me because my mother lived through so many different parts of American history. This is something I had as a constant reminder of, and then my older sisters and my sister pointed out to me this morning that 42% of her graduating class in law school were women. 18% of partners at law firms are women. I mean, there's still an uphill climb, but it's not as visible as it used to be because you're not. I think sometimes it's hard, and I think it's great that younger women are able to live lives that aren't impacted by this stuff, so much so that they look at this whole range of candidates and say, I'm picking this one or I'm picking that one, and that I think that's wonderful that the world has changed so much. But I think that, like I said, it's sometimes easy to forget how shortly, how soon in the recent past things were very, very different.
Hillary Clinton has also had a tough battle with Bernie Sanders, and now Bernie Sanders is meeting today at the White House with the president, and then everyone's talking about how Bernie kind of has to now start to bow out gracefully. Nolan, what are you seeing kind of coming ahead here?
Well, I don't think he's going to bow out until he gets to the convention. I think he's looking for a big platform at the convention. He's still convinced the super delegates might turn. I mean, if you look at the polls, he still does better against Donald Trump than she does. Of course, John Kasich did better against Hillary Clinton than Trump does, and he didn't get the Republican nomination. So there's things for him to cling to. He doesn't know where this FBI investigation goes any more than the rest of us. I think he's reluctant to get out, before he's exhausted every possibility. I would think that he's already done that, but he clearly doesn't see
Well,
that
Is that
way.
part of the role of the president, though, now to kind of say, okay, let's talk about what you might need, what you might want, and so we can start to unify a little
So
bit here.
I think there's a window here for Bernie Sanders. I think that he's done an interesting job of changing the conversation in the Democratic Party among progressives about what's possible to do in terms of reform. And I think that he has a real opportunity to shift the party platform, but I think that that is a limited window, and I think that's maybe part of what the president might talk to him about. You know, you have political capital to spend, but the closer we get to the convention and you just look kind of like a bitter hanger-on, as opposed to someone who has real substantive contributions to offer. I mean, at this point, someone who spent so much time, and whose followers have spent so much time railing against a coronation and asking delegates to disregard the popular vote is basically asking for a coronation, and that's going to get more awkward as the convention
Well,
approaches.
it's going to be something really interesting to watch this summer, of course, with the Clinton-Trump dynamic. All right, Nancy Capper, thanks so much for joining us. Nolan, it's good to see you as always. We'll see you again next week.